I've kept this hidden for years. But tonight, I'm finally telling you what I found after cleaning up at Taylor Swift's private party. It wasn't the mess that scared me. It was what was in the bathroom sink. What I saw there. I can't unsee it. I shouldn't have been there. I was just a janitor, cleaning up the aftermath of a night I wasn't supposed to witness. But something followed me that night, and it's never let me go. What I found in that sink, it still haunts me. Let me tell you what happened. I've never spoken about this, not to anyone, but I can't hold it in anymore. What I found that night, you won't believe it. You wouldn't want to believe it. I was just there to do a job, something simple, something beneath the surface of the real event. A janitor, cleaning up after one of those big celebrity parties, the kind that gets whispered about. I never cared much for the stars or the glitz. They're just people, right? But this party, this one was different. It happened just a few months ago, late at night, in an upscale venue where the air itself feels thick with money. Taylor Swift's private event. The kind of party you only hear about in rumors or gossip columns. The staff, the servers, even the security guards. They all acted like they were afraid of something, though none of them would admit it. I didn't understand why at first. I was just here to clean. The venue was vast, too big for its own good, stretching across a few floors of an exclusive downtown building. I've cleaned up after high-profile events before, but this felt different. There was this heaviness to it, like the place was holding its breath, waiting for something. The party had just ended. The guests had left, but the energy in the air lingered, thick and palpable. I've worked in this kind of environment before, and the bathrooms were always the same, neat, well kept, nothing unusual. But that night, as I walked in, there was something off. It was the smell, subtle, lingering in the air. Not the typical scent of perfumes or body sprays, but something heavier, more metallic. Something that made the back of my neck itch. I pushed the thought away and got to work, but as I stepped closer to one of the sinks, I saw something that made my heart stop. It was a faint discoloration in the water. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but when I leaned in closer, I saw that it wasn't water at all. The liquid was dark, too dark for it to be anything normal. And I don't even know why I thought this, but it seemed like it was moving. Not physically, not in the way water flows, but in a way I can't describe. Something didn't feel right. I turned on the faucet, trying to rinse it away, but the liquid stayed. It didn't run down the drain. It just sat there, waiting. And then, just as I was about to pull away, something caught my eye in the reflection. A movement behind me. A shadow. The room was empty. I was alone. But the feeling of being watched was there. Like someone or something was standing right behind me, just out of sight. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, that I was tired, maybe a little delirious from cleaning all night. But deep down, I knew. I knew that what I was feeling wasn't just a product of exhaustion. I stepped back, grabbed the cleaning supplies, and tried to force myself to focus. But then I saw it, scratched into the edge of the sink, hidden just out of plain sight, was something that stopped me dead in my tracks. A symbol. something that looked like it was burned into the porcelain. I could barely make it out at first, but as my fingers brushed against the sink, the marks became clearer. It wasn't something that was meant to be seen, not by anyone. It was a warning. I didn't know how long I stood there. I only knew that my heart was pounding in my chest, my hands shaking as I tried to finish cleaning. But I couldn't get the image of that symbol out of my head. I couldn't get the feeling of being watched out of my mind. Every corner of that bathroom felt like it was closing in on me, suffocating me, trapping me in a place I couldn't escape. I finished cleaning as quickly as I could and made my way out of the bathroom. But as I passed the other rooms, as I walked through the long hallways lined with empty glasses and stale air, the feeling didn't leave me. It followed me, clinging to my skin, to my thoughts. And then I heard it. A whisper. Soft at first, like a breath, but then louder, more distinct. My name. I looked around. There was no one, but I heard it again. It wasn't over. I knew then that what happened that night wasn't just a random incident. It wasn't just a mess I was hired to clean. There was something deeper, something dark that I had uncovered. And now, it wasn't going to let me go. I kept walking, trying to get out, but the whispers followed. The presence followed, and I couldn't help but think, was it Taylor herself who brought this darkness with her? Or was it something else entirely? Something I had no business finding. As I turned the corner and reached the exit, I stopped. For a moment, I felt relief. The night was over. I was done. But that's when I heard it. The sound of the faucet turning on in the bathroom. And I knew I wasn't the only one left in that building. Something was still there, waiting, watching. And it wasn't done with me yet. The door creaked open and I stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of fresh flowers that seemed to cling to the walls. For a moment, the room felt almost welcoming, like a polished display meant to soothe, to impress. It was a small bathroom, tucked away from the rest of the party. The kind of space that shouldn't feel so isolated. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. The tile gleamed under the soft light, pristine white with just the faintest gleam of artificial gloss. The countertops were free of dust, every surface wiped clean to the point of excess. But despite the sterility of it all, the room still felt somehow lived in. The light, dimmed to an almost soothing level, bounced off the mirror, casting shadows that shouldn't have been there. For a moment, I thought it might have been my reflection, off kilter, just enough to make me second-guess my own movements. But it wasn't. The mirror was clear. The faucet was still dripping. Drip. I hesitated, staring at the steady, rhythmic sound that echoed far too loud in the silence. It seemed louder than it should have been. The water was almost still, just enough to create that faint ripple every time it hit the porcelain. I couldn't stop looking at it, but I knew I had a job to do. I had to finish. I shook my head, trying to push away the feeling creeping in from the edges of my mind. The light was soft, but the shadows were too sharp. The tile underfoot, smooth and cold, didn't feel as clean as it looked. And the air, it felt heavier than usual. Not with the perfume of flowers or the lingering traces of the party, but something else. Something older. Something that didn't belong. I set down my cleaning supplies, wiping my hands on my pants as I walked toward the counter. Everything in the room felt so meticulously arranged. The tiny hand soap placed just so. The glass tumbler by the sink, perfectly upright. Even the towels on the rack were fluffed to an immaculate degree. It was as though this bathroom had been prepared specifically for me to clean, designed to feel too perfect, too controlled. But that's when it hit me. It was too clean. It didn't feel natural. I turned away from the counter, glancing at the stalls, each one closed and empty. The room was utterly still, save for that damn drip, drip, drip. I stepped toward the sink, taking in the gleaming faucet, the perfect surface of the sink. It looked too polished, too untouched. And then I saw it. A faint stain. Small, dark, almost like an accidental splash. But it wasn't just that. There was something about the way it shimmered, caught by the soft light above, something unsettling about the way it didn't fade, didn't absorb into the white. It sat there, on the porcelain, with a presence of its own, like it was waiting to be noticed. I bent down, closer to inspect it, a strange knot forming in my stomach. The scent of the air had shifted, almost imperceptibly. It wasn't fresh flowers anymore. It was something thicker, like damp earth, like something forgotten. The smell you can't place, but that sticks in your chest, heavy, lingering. I reached for the cloth, wiping the small stain with slow, deliberate movements. My fingers brushed the surface of the sink, and it felt, cold. Not cold in the usual way. Not like the ceramic was simply cold from the air. But it was an unnatural cold, like the sink had been waiting, frozen in time, until I touched it. It shouldn't have felt like that. But it did. The silence in the room stretched, as though waiting for me to make the next move. My breath, shallow, quickened. I could hear the faint buzzing of the lights above, an almost imperceptible hum that somehow filled the space more than the water ever could. It became louder the longer I stood there, and I noticed that the drip had stopped. Suddenly, it was too quiet. I stood there for a moment, feeling like I should leave, like I should walk away. But something was pulling me in. Something kept me rooted to that spot, that sink, that cold porcelain. The air around me seemed to shift. My fingers twitched, wanting to wipe it clean, to be done with it, but my gaze kept drifting back to the stain. I couldn't stop staring at it. My heart raced a little faster, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. I should have finished my work and left. That's what I told myself. But the more I thought about it, the more the room felt like it was closing in on me. The shadows that had once been soft and inviting now seemed sharp, cutting through the dim light like they were hiding something. I reached for the faucet to rinse the cloth, trying to ignore the feeling crawling up my spine, the feeling that the room itself was watching. Just as I turned the faucet, a soft shudder ran through the pipes. The water sputtered out, barely a stream. I paused, waiting for it to clear. But when the water came through, it was dark, almost as dark as the stain. It wasn't clear. It wasn't clean. It was thick, like something had been dissolved in it. I recoiled, pulling my hand away from the faucet. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't even begin to rationalize what I was seeing. But there was something wrong. Something wrong with the water. Something wrong with the air. Something wrong with the way that stain shifted under the flow. The light flickered for a split second, and in that brief moment of darkness, I felt it. A presence, a sensation of something watching me. Not just the room, but me. The weight of something ancient pressing in from all sides. I quickly turned the faucet off, trying to shake it off. But that sensation, the one that crawls under your skin, making your neck prick with fear, lingered. I grabbed my supplies, ready to leave. But before I could turn to go, I caught a reflection in the mirror. For a split second, I thought I saw something move behind me. A shadow, a shift. But when I turned around, there was nothing. I shook my head, convinced it was just my imagination. But as I stepped out of the bathroom, my footsteps echoed louder than they should have. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still there, waiting. The door clicked shut behind me, but I couldn't forget the mirror, the feeling of being watched. The room still empty, but never truly empty. What I didn't realize then was that leaving the room wouldn't be enough, because something had followed me, and it was just getting started. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't a loud, obvious thing, nothing dramatic or attention-grabbing. It was in the small moments, the subtle details that tugged at the edges of my awareness. It was the way the light flickered as I walked down the hall, casting strange shadows against the walls. It was the sound of distant footsteps that stopped whenever I paused, making it feel like someone was trailing me, even when I knew I was alone. There was a presence in the air that made my skin itch, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I thought I'd feel relief once I left the bathroom, once I stepped back into the main areas of the venue. I was wrong. It felt like the air had thickened, like something had shifted in the building, and I couldn't figure out exactly what. As I walked through the main hall, I tried to focus on my work. I needed to finish the job, but every corner I turned, something else caught my attention. A dirty glass left on a table, the hum of the air conditioning that seemed to grow louder the longer I stood still, the strange sense that something was being hidden from me. I was almost through the hallway when I saw him. A guest, one of the last lingering people from the party, stepped into view from the corner. He didn't seem particularly out of place, well-dressed, confident stride. But when he looked at me, something in his eyes made my stomach twist. It wasn't a normal look. He didn't smile or offer the kind of polite nod you'd expect after catching someone's eye. His gaze lingered on me, studying me as if he could see right through me. It wasn't judgment. It wasn't a curiosity. It was something else, something unsettling, like he knew something I didn't. I tried to look away, but his eyes didn't break contact. There was something cold about the way he watched me. His lips didn't move, but there was a message in his stare that sent a chill down my spine. For a moment, I thought about saying something, anything. But then he turned and walked away, like he was just a part of the place, vanishing into the next room without a second glance. I couldn't stop thinking about the look in his eyes. It was like he was waiting for something, like he knew what was coming, and I was just too oblivious to understand. I brushed it off. I had to. I couldn't afford to let my nerves get the best of me. I needed to finish the job. But then, I found the locked room. At first, I didn't think much of it. I'd passed it a few times, just another door tucked away in the back of the venue. It was unmarked, like the others, But this one was different. The door stood slightly ajar, and I could see the faint outline of a darkened space inside. I could have sworn I heard something from beyond it, a murmur, or maybe it was just the hum of the air conditioning again. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. I paused for a moment, hand hovering over the doorframe. Something about the way the room sat there, so quiet and untouched, felt wrong. Why was it locked? Why was it hidden away? I was about to turn away when the sound came again, this time clearer, more distinct. A soft scrape, like metal on metal. The door creaked, just slightly, as if someone inside had pushed against it. I leaned forward instinctively, trying to peer inside, but I couldn't see much beyond the shadows. Just a corner, a sliver of dark space. The air around it felt cooler somehow, like the temperature had dropped a few degrees. I pulled my hand back, slowly. What was I doing? I wasn't supposed to be snooping around. I wasn't even supposed to be here at all, really. I turned away quickly, trying to push the thought from my mind. I had a job to do. I needed to get back to work. But the feeling that something was locked away in that room, it stayed with me. As I moved deeper into the venue, the atmosphere shifted again. The air felt thicker, heavier, like I was moving through water. I couldn't explain it, but the hallway started to feel more like a maze, every corner twisting in on itself, like the building was getting smaller. I saw one of the staff members near the end of the hall, standing by a door that led to the back of the kitchen. Her back was to me, but I could see the way she shifted uncomfortably when I approached. It wasn't obvious at first, but when I got closer, I saw it. Her hands were trembling, just slightly, but enough to notice. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost like she was waiting for something, or someone. I nodded as I walked past her, but she didn't respond. She didn't even acknowledge me. It was like I wasn't there, like I was just part of the background noise. The unease settled deeper into my gut. Why hadn't she said anything? Why hadn't she even looked at me? The polite smile, the small talk, it was all gone. It was like she was hiding something I wasn't supposed to see. I kept walking, faster now, trying to distance myself from the feeling creeping up my spine. But then I heard it, a voice, soft and distant, calling my name from behind me. I whipped around, but the hall was empty. The staff member was gone. No one was there. The chill on the back of my neck intensified. Something was wrong here. I started walking faster, my pulse quickening. The building felt like it was closing in on me. The walls were too tight, the air too thick, and every shadow seemed to move, watching me. And then I saw her. Taylor Swift. She stood at the far end of the hall, just inside the room where the party had taken place. Her back was to me, and for a moment, she seemed distant, like she was somewhere else, somewhere beyond the party, beyond the night. She didn't turn around when I approached. She didn't even acknowledge my presence. It was like I wasn't there at all, like I was invisible. I felt a shiver of unease creep up my spine. Her posture was stiff, unnatural, like she was standing perfectly still on purpose. And when she finally turned her head, her eyes met mine, but they weren't her eyes. Not really. There was something off about them. Something cold. She smiled, just a thin, polite smile, and then walked into the room without a word, leaving me standing there in the hall, alone. I didn't know what to make of it, but as I stood there, staring at the door she'd just passed through, I knew one thing for certain. Something was wrong. And it was only just beginning. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this place than I could see. I couldn't stop thinking about that locked room. Something was waiting there. Something that wasn't meant to be found. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Every room I stepped into, every hallway I walked down, felt colder, darker. The building, once polished and professional, was starting to feel like a maze, like it was twisting itself around me, trying to trap me inside. I kept telling myself it was just exhaustion, that I was overthinking it. But there was this gnawing feeling in my gut, a deep sense of wrongness that I couldn't ignore any longer. I'd seen enough, heard enough. And now, I knew for sure something was happening here that went beyond the party. At first, I tried to convince myself I was just imagining things, just another late-night paranoia. But with every passing moment, the unease grew sharper, more insistent. I wasn't alone. I wasn't just cleaning up after an event. There was something here with me. I walked past the main ballroom, half-heartedly trying to clean the last few corners. The place was mostly empty now. The last remnants of the party scattered like pieces of a fading dream. There was no music, no laughter, just the heavy, echoing silence that seemed to grow deeper the longer I stayed. The walls felt closer now, as if they were pressing in on me. I glanced over at the corner, noticing a faint shadow in the doorway of a small storage room. The light was flickering again, but it wasn't the usual glitch. It wasn't like the other bulbs. This light pulsed, as if it were breathing, and the longer I stared at it, the more it felt like it was drawing me in. I turned quickly and tried to focus on the task at hand, but there it was again, that creeping sense of something behind me, lurking, waiting. I moved faster, my footsteps quickening against the cold marble floor. But I didn't dare look back. That's when I saw it. The door to the locked room, the one I'd noticed earlier, was slightly ajar. It hadn't been like this before. I was sure of it. The last time I checked, the door had been firmly closed, the lock intact. But now it was open just enough to slip through, the darkness inside swallowing up any light that came near. I paused, my breath catching in my throat. There it was again, that same presence, lurking just beyond the door, as if it was waiting for me to come closer. I took a step forward, the instinct to know what was inside pulling me in like a magnet. I couldn't stop myself. Every part of me screamed to leave, to get out of this place, but my feet moved forward anyway, slowly, hesitantly. And then, as if on cue, the air grew colder. I felt it like a gust of wind, but it didn't move the air around me. No, it didn't feel like wind at all. It was something else. The temperature dropped by what felt like 10 degrees, all in an instant, until my breath fogged in the air. I turned away, heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't do this. I couldn't keep walking down this path, not when every instinct was telling me to run. But as I turned, I heard something. A low, drawn-out sound, like a whisper just below the threshold of hearing. I froze. My body went stiff. It came from the locked room. I couldn't understand what it was. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't even a sound. It was like a like a vibration in the air, a pressure that made my chest tighten. It felt like something was alive in that room. Something that shouldn't be.
I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was suffocating, but not because of the air. No, it was the weight of whatever was in there, whatever was waiting, that was choking the life out of me.
I tried to move, tried to step away, but my feet wouldn't obey. It was like they were glued to the floor, held there by the force of that presence, that cold pressure. I reached for the doorknob, half aware that I was doing it, my fingers trembling as I wrapped them around the metal. But I didn't turn it in. I couldn't. I was terrified of what I might find, of what might be waiting on the other side. The door slammed shut with a violent force that sent a shock through my whole body. I jerked back, my heart pounding in my chest, blood rushing in my ears. The room, it was locked again. Number, I didn't even hear the click of the latch. The room wasn't supposed to be locked again. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't opened it. I turned away quickly, my head spinning, my breathing shallow. My mind raced with thoughts, but none of them made sense. I needed to get out of here. I needed to leave. And that's when I saw it. A figure, just standing there, watching me from the far end of the hall. At first, I thought it was one of the staff members, but then I realized I'd seen that face before. It was the same man from earlier, the guest with a cold stare. But now, his face was twisted, stretched out, like a mask that didn't quite fit. His eyes were wide, too wide, and his mouth hung open in a grotesque grin that didn't match the calm expression I'd seen before. He didn't move. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring at me. I froze. My pulse thundered in my ears, my body refusing to obey. My mind screamed for me to run, to do anything, but I couldn't. I couldn't tear my eyes away from him, from that thing that wasn't quite human anymore. Then, without a word, he slowly raised one hand and pointed directly at me. I didn't know what that meant, but it felt like a death sentence.
And that's when everything stopped. The building, the lights, the air, all of it fell into a suffocating silence.
I couldn't hear anything but the blood in my ears, the pounding in my chest. It felt like time had frozen, like the world had come to a standstill. Then, slowly, the lights above me flickered again. This time, the flicker lasted longer. It stretched into something that felt like a warning. And then I heard it. A voice, soft, hushed. A whisper that came from nowhere and everywhere, all at once.
You shouldn't have seen it.
The walls seemed to close in on me.
And that's when I knew.
Whatever was going on here, whatever had been happening since I first stepped foot in this place, it was no accident. It was hunting me. I had no choice now. I couldn't turn back. Something had already decided I was part of the story. The cold still clung to my skin as I stood there, trembling. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. Something far worse was waiting. I didn't know how much longer I could keep pretending I was in control. Everything I'd seen, everything I'd felt, it was starting to get too real. The walls of this place were closing in on me, and no matter how fast I ran, no matter how far I tried to distance myself from it, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched. followed, haunted by something I couldn't see or touch. The lights flickered again, but this time, it wasn't just a small glitch. It was like the room was stuttering, catching its breath as if it was waiting for something to happen. I stood in the middle of the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. My hands were clammy, shaking. It felt like the air itself was tightening, pressing against me. I could barely breathe. I couldn't keep pretending this was normal. I knew now that something was deeply wrong, and I was already too far gone to stop it. I had spent so much time convincing myself that what I was feeling wasn't real, that it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but I couldn't lie to myself anymore. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't exhaustion. It was something else, something darker. And then it happened. I heard the whispers again, soft, like a breath against my ear, like someone speaking just out of reach. But this time, the voice was familiar. It was my own voice. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I heard it again, clearer this time, echoing in my skull. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. I tried to dismiss it. I tried to tell myself that it was just the pressure building up in my head, the stress of this never-ending night. But the words were too sharp, too real. It was like my mind was unraveling, the truth pulling at the seams of my sanity. I staggered forward, my feet moving before I could think. The hallway stretched out before me, but it felt like the walls were shifting, changing, like they were bending, warping around me. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, but the shapes in front of me weren't right. The corners of the room were too dark, the light too bright, the shadows too deep. The walls were bleeding. I rubbed my eyes, convinced that I was hallucinating, but when I opened them again, the walls were still there. The blood wasn't real, but it felt real. The thick, dark liquid clung to the surface like it was dripping from the edges of the room, running down the walls, pooling at my feet. I stepped back, my heart racing. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't be. It's just a trick. It's just your mind. But the more I told myself that, the more it felt like I was falling deeper into something I couldn't control. I reached for the door handle, my fingers numb, my pulse pounding in my ears. The room felt too cold now. The air thick and stale, like something had settled here. But I couldn't leave. I couldn't just walk away from what was happening. When I opened the door, I expected it to be empty, to be just another room, just another place I didn't want to be. But instead, I found it. It was her, Taylor. She was standing in the center of the room, facing away from me, her figure dark against the light. Her silhouette was rigid, unmoving. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. She didn't turn around. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. But then, slowly, she began to turn. The smile that spread across her face wasn't right. It was too wide, too forced. Her eyes, those eyes were empty, hollow, like something had taken her, twisted her, and left only the remnants of a person. I wanted to speak. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My throat felt tight, choking on the weight of what I was seeing. Her lips parted, but instead of words, it was a low, guttural sound. Not a word I recognized. It wasn't a language. It was A sound, a growl from the deepest part of her throat. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run as far as I could, but my feet wouldn't move. My body was frozen in place, rooted to the spot, like the room itself was holding me there. And then she spoke. "You're still here, aren't you?"
The voice was hers, but it wasn't her voice. It was cold, distant, like something ancient was speaking through her.
I felt the ground shift beneath me. My mind felt like it was slipping, like I was losing touch with reality. The walls of the room were breathing now, rising and falling like the chest of something alive.
The air felt wrong, thick with something I couldn't name.
And then, with a snap of her fingers, the room was gone.
I blinked, and everything changed. I was no longer in the room with her. I was standing in a dark hallway, but it wasn't the hallway I knew. The walls were cracked, the floor warped, the ceiling too high, too wide. The space stretched on, infinite, like I was trapped in some kind of twisted maze. And then I saw it, the thing that made my stomach drop. A door at the far end of the hallway, a locked door. I knew I had to get there. I had to open it. But the closer I got, the more the floor seemed to shift beneath me. The door wasn't right. It was wrong in ways I couldn't explain. There was a symbol carved into the wood, something I recognized from earlier. The same symbol from the sink.
I could hear her voice again. That same cold, hollow tone reverberating through the hallway, echoing off the walls like a warning.
It's not real. You shouldn't have come, but you're already too far gone.
I reached for the handle, and it felt like the air itself was pulling me in. The cold seeped through the door, and I knew, deep down, that whatever was behind it would break me.
I had to open it. I had no choice.
But just before I could reach for the door, everything went black. I don't know how long I stood there in the dark, but when I opened my eyes again, I was back in the hallway. It was quiet now, too quiet. The door was still there, waiting. And so was the thing I'd been trying to outrun. Something was waiting on the other side. Something that had already claimed me. The worst part? I was too afraid to open it. I didn't know how to get out, but I knew I couldn't stay here any longer. Whatever was waiting, it wasn't finished with me yet. I don't remember how I got out of there. I don't remember running, but my legs were already moving before I could think about it. The sound of my footsteps echoed too loudly in the hallway, the pounding in my chest drowning out every other noise. I stumbled over the floor, my body moving on instinct, fueled by nothing but sheer panic. My heart was racing, every breath sharp and shallow, as though I couldn't get enough air into my lungs. I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. It felt like I was running away from something that was chasing me. My mind screamed at me to keep moving, to get away, but every part of me screamed back in protest. I should have stayed. I should have faced it. But all I wanted was to get out of this nightmare. I thought if I just kept moving, I would find the exit. I would escape. But I couldn't escape it. My hand fumbled against the walls as I ran, trying to steady myself, but everything around me blurred. The walls seemed to stretch out, the corridors grew darker, and the further I went, the more distorted everything felt. The floor beneath me felt uneven, like it was sinking or shifting, pulling me back into the place I couldn't leave. I knew I should have turned back, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. Not with that feeling gnawing at my insides. I didn't know where I was anymore. The layout of the building had changed. I had passed the same doors over and over again, but they didn't look familiar anymore. Finally, I found a door. It wasn't the exit, I knew that, but it was something. Anything. My hand reached for the handle, shaking as if the door itself would pull away from me. It opened with a creak that sent a jolt through my spine. But as I stepped inside, I froze. There was a mirror. It was standing in the middle of the room, tall, dark, and silent. I don't know why I felt compelled to look into it, but my feet moved closer on their own. My reflection was wrong. It was like it wasn't me anymore. It was like I was looking at a stranger. My eyes were hollow, my face pale, but not the pale of fear. It was the pale of something else. A part of me wanted to scream, to shout, to do anything but stand there. But I couldn't. My body was frozen in place, trapped by my own reflection. The room seemed to shrink around me, the walls pressing in, the floor tightening like a vice. The voice in my head told me to run, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the mirror. I couldn't look away. I had to face it, and had to understand what was happening. I took a slow step forward, closer to the mirror. My reflection tilted its head just slightly. It wasn't me. It couldn't be. The person in the glass had a twisted smile that wasn't mine. I could feel my skin crawling, but the fear paralyzed me. The smile, it grew wider, stretching beyond what should have been possible. The reflection wasn't smiling at me. It made me smile, like it knew something I didn't. Like it had control over me. I felt it then. The fear, the regret, the wave of trauma crashed through me like I'd been hit by something. It wasn't just what I'd seen. It was knowing. I had seen it all. I found it. I had crossed the line, and I couldn't turn back. I had walked into something I was never supposed to understand. Something I was never meant to uncover. But I couldn't leave. The door was still open, but the hallway was gone. It was as if the building had disappeared, leaving me trapped in this one room with this thing. I finally managed to pull my eyes away from the mirror, but it felt like the reflection followed me. It felt like it was in my mind, in the very air around me. I turned, and then I saw it. The door. The one that hadn't been there before. It was now locked. The knob rattled in my hand as I tried to turn it, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me, raw and unfiltered. I could feel the walls pressing in again, the shadows twisting at the corners of my vision. Something was coming. I didn't know what, but I could feel it. That's when I heard it. A voice. Quiet. Barely a whisper. You shouldn't have looked. The voice wasn't from outside. It was in my head. A whispering thought that wasn't my own. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight it, to run, but I was trapped. Trapped by my own mind, by this place, by whatever force was playing with me. I couldn't escape. I couldn't escape the thing that was slowly creeping into my thoughts, twisting my reality until I couldn't even trust what I was seeing. I stumbled back from the door, my back hitting the cold wall. I gasped for air, but it wasn't enough. It felt like the room was suffocating me. The whispers grew louder, filling my head, drowning out everything else. The reflection in the mirror. It wasn't just my image anymore. It was them.
The people I had seen earlier, the guests, the staff, the man with the cold stare. They were all there in the mirror, watching me. Their eyes were empty, hollow, like they weren't really there, like they were part of something that didn't belong. I felt my body tremble, my knees threatening to give out beneath me, my vision blurred, and I clutched my head trying to block out the noise, the voices, the faces. You shouldn't have seen it. You shouldn't have known. The words echoed in my skull, crashing through my sanity. And then, a jolt, a sharp pain in my chest. I stumbled back. My hand went to my heart, but it was wrong. It wasn't my heartbeat I felt. It was something else, a pulse that wasn't mine, a rhythm that was out of sync with everything I knew. I gasped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't. It's already too late. The room spun. The mirror shattered. The walls, the voices, the presence, everything collapsed into darkness. I don't know how long I stood there, suspended in the void, but when I finally opened my eyes again, I was back. Back where it all began. The hallway, the whispers, and the locked door. But now, I know. It wasn't finished with me. Not by a long shot. It was waiting. I wish I could tell you that it's over, that I've left it behind, but I can't. The truth is, whatever I saw, whatever I felt, it's still with me. It lingers in the corners of my mind, whispering in the dark, waiting. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel it every day now. That thing, that presence, it's always there. I hear it in the quiet moments, in the spaces between breaths. It's like I've become a part of it, a part of whatever that place was, and it's not letting me go.